and founder of Something or Other Publishing, Wade Franson, is the host of Created in the Image of God, a series that examines the role of religion in society, from messianic returns to the emotive responses transmitted through our culture. Wade fearlessly addresses reality claims from all directions, objectively exploring their compatibility with Holy Scripture. Tonight's episode, Royal Falcon and the Hillcrest Orchard Camp Programs, with Barbara Brehon.
Good evening, everybody. I'm your host, Wade Franson, with the Created in the Image of God show. And I am here with Associate Pastor Barbara Brehon, who has become a very dear friend of mine in just the few months since we first met, having had her on the show right here in this studio a few months ago. So much has happened since then. I don't know how many of you saw the sneak peek that we sent out about tonight's show with some of the videos that illustrate what we've all been up to. But Barbara, it's such a joy to have you back in the studio today. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well, and I'm thrilled to be back. We've got a lot that we are doing and a lot that we could talk about.
Indeed, we do. And we were just having a wonderful warm-up chat in the studio about the title of the show, Created in the Image of God, which is something that Pastor Brehon knows something about. We're going to get into a number of topics tonight, including how we both do work with the young people in our environments, in our social circles, and how important that work is, but also a little bit about churches, theology, and religion in general. So really excited about where I think this show will go tonight, and probably some places that we don't yet know that it will go tonight.
That makes it exciting because we don't know. It's not scripted.
Yep. There's another exciting thing tonight, which is we are announcing tonight officially that Royal Falcon Foundation is opening its doors for you to participate in supporting our mission. I launched the Royal Falcon Foundation almost a year ago now, back in March, with the goal of using it as a nonprofit, a 501c3, to support the camp programs that we've been doing. Now, some of you know I've been involved in youth camps all my life, going back to the very first ones that I attended as a young teen up in Alaska, then flying down to the church camp in Orr, Minnesota when I was 14. And later, as a college student, I began working as staff at a camp in Scotland on the Bonnie banks of Loch Lomond. And I went back 6 times to that camp because it was just such a powerful experience. I was one of the Americans that had been, I think there was another person who had been maybe 7 times, an American who'd been back 7 times. But I was one of the most frequently visited Americans there, and just made friendships that I treasure to this day from young people all over Europe, both the youth that I worked with and my fellow staff members. I then went to South Africa for a summer camp program where I taught windsurfing and sailing and was a counselor there as well. And then did winter camps in Austria where we were doing skiing in the Alps. And then I established and directed a summer camp in Germany, ran it for 5 years, and in the end it had 4 languages. But these were all in a religious church context. And the camps that we're working with today, we're trying to be a little bit more inclusive and expansive and help not only share the values and the spiritual principles with those who may not be churched or who may not belong to a particular church or our church, but also the reverse, right? Make sure that young people who are in churches have a way to share themselves and their faith in a natural way within these camp programs. So unity in diversity, of every kind of diversity of thought, diversity of religion, and of course, diversity of race, and so on as well. But those are some of the goals that we wanted to accomplish with Royal Falcon Foundation. And it was quite a journey to get the IRS to grant the accreditation, or the determination letter, as it's called. It was rejected once, and it wasn't really anything other than that I had failed to do some things because I was a newbie at this. But we finally got that all wrapped up, and we've put together a program of tiers where you can get involved through donations as low as $10. And so we're going to sort of roll that out a little bit later tonight. So we got a whole lot of things wrapped up in this program. And the first thing we want to do, Barbara, is having shared sort of my background in the camps, I'd like for you to share a little bit about your background. I mean, we learned a little bit about you in the first episode, but many of the guests were not there. And you shared something right before we went live about your experience working with young people in an official sort of government capacity sense. So I want you to share a little bit about your background in that context.
I have several contexts to share. So what I think I will do so that I won't get lost in my own sauce is to start and go retrospectively backward. And so most recently, I ran the alternative education program for Essex County Public Schools. And I basically worked with that for about 5 years. And my goal was to assist the county school system in helping kids who have been put out of school have a place to go still in school, so to speak. So I ran a school within a school. So there was a spot where they could come and they could do training with me as well as their regular schoolwork. So they were kicked out, but yet they were in and didn't lose any of their credits. They didn't lose any of their time. And there were restorative justice practices that I could infuse into them, and had to write a recommendation for them to be returned to their regular class environment. Prior to that, I worked with Department of Juvenile Justice. Literally, I worked 7 years, 7.5 years or so with the State Department of Juvenile Justice for Virginia. And I was teacher in an incarcerated setting where the kids had been kicked out of school and sentenced because of crimes that they committed. And the judge placed them in these facilities. They were locked up and in prison. And so I was behind bars, so to speak, working with students that were junior high and high school age. And so I guess the youngest that we had was maybe 11 or 12 years old, and the oldest was 17 and whatever, because as soon as they got 18, they had to be shipped off to the adult. But working with those kids in that setting, I have a lot of ideas about causes for persons to be in those situations, whether it comes from this, that, or the other. And what can we do in our communities now to prevent those things? And teaching leadership skills is just a wonderful way to approach it, and doing it through experience where it's not all just stuck with your head in a book or a pamphlet or something. Now, rolling it back even further than that, I used to run a day camp at my church back in Norfolk, Virginia. And it was the summer, I called it the Summer Enhancement Program. And the students, not students, but people would come, because they weren't necessarily just members of our church family, but people in the community as well could send their students there. And we did all kinds of activities that were fun, but I did teach the Bible. And of course, it was all about keeping the kids busy during the summer, but we were engaged. I had a staff of people that worked with me. We had transportation to go on trips, and we did all kinds of wonderful things, but it was very experiential. We did a Bible study lessons in there and all of that. Another set of experiences that I've had in working with kids in a camp-like atmosphere was connected on a larger scale with my denominational conventions, conferences, retreats, whatever kinds of words we use to denote what the children or the teens were coming to. And we were at this place called Eagle Eyrie, and there was another time we went to these dormitories on a college campus, and all those experiences where you bring the kids together, adults as well, and you work together as families, you work together as individuals, because the classes were structured so that there were interest-oriented and themed classes, but lots of different kinds of experiences where there's a need for structure, but there's also a need for fellowship, a need for activities that are structuredly unstructured
Yeah.
so that they feel a sense of freedom, and there's some
Yep.
choices in there, but you can't, go too far with either one thing. So I've got a lot of experiences that are different, but the whole nature of camp, the way that Wade Franson knows camp, is not something that this city girl knows about. I'm from a city person living in a rural community now, but there's still more of the city in me than
Yep.
the rural. I'm still more urban than rural in my thinking, I know. And so I depend on people in my current community to reel me in when I step out of the box too far. I know I need their help, and I hope that they watch this so that they understand more of what it is that we're trying to do as we try to bring the camp idea of Royal Falcon to support what we're doing here, rather than Royal Falcon is coming to tell us what we ought to be doing and all of that. It's not like that. You're a support.
Absolutely not.
What we're doing.
And so, yeah, thank you so much for sharing that experience. And it really is about bringing those diverse experiences together so that we have the benefit of a diversity of viewpoints and opinions. We even asked the young participants in a survey, what would you like to see more of? The number one answer is always more free time. And we, to your point, well, we try to structure it so that it feels like free time, but free time is not necessarily what they need in that in that setting. So anyway, one more little difference about tonight's show is we're not going to do our usual commercial breaks. The commercial breaks will be taken. Some of the videos of actual camp footage will be taking the place. So I'm going to just start to give the audience an understanding of what we're talking about, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. So if that's true, then I don't know how many words a video is worth. But we were very blessed to have Jafar Falahi, who is an Emmy-nominated filmmaker. At each one of these camps that we have videos from, 4 of them. And this first one is unique because while he shot the footage, my daughter, who was 14 at the time, just turned 14. She actually edited this video. And of course, she got her experience doing so on TikTok, right? Which I'm kind of ashamed to say, but these girls, they start editing these little videos from the time they're very young these days. So, videoing their dance moves and stuff, and learning about, putting music to it and little clips. But anyway, so she did the editing, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we integrate the young people into the program and how the success and future of the program relies on them as well. But I'm going to go ahead and share then the first video. It's a little over 2 minutes long, and it'll give you an insight into the first camp we did at our home here in Brooklyn, Wisconsin, to sort of launch this program. This is the first ever time we've had this camp. And we hope it'll just be the first of many camps on this property. Because when we found this property and saw it and decided to buy it, that was one of the first things we had in mind, is lots of activities and lots of people over to enjoy it with us. This camp is so new, it doesn't even have a name. So thank you very much for all coming for the first ever blank camp.
First, they consulted on how they were going to do the obstacle course together. Each child had a role to play. Our second was the action part of it, where they put that consultation into action through an obstacle course. We also did nature hikes.
People are like really happy they got to like see their friends, like make new friends and like swim in the pool.
And planted trees, they moved rocks, they planted seedlings. My hope was that the adolescent teens would work together and that they would each contribute to the whole, and that each would come away feeling that they learned something new and that they discovered something new about themselves by working with their team.
But you gotta be careful.
At first, when I saw that there were so many people there, I was like shy and stuff. But then we became friends by the end of it. We were all laughing and stuff.
I'm really looking forward to the next camps. I hope it's fun like this one and like a bunch of cool people come.
So that was the first camp that we did. We didn't have the Royal Falcon Foundation. We didn't even have a name for the camp. I was tempted to stop and point out the temporary tents that we had over the educational area, because in the next video a year later, we're going to show how we did some construction and put up some pavilions, which you'll see in the next video. We laid some sidewalk. We put in some outdoor showers to make it a little bit more amenable to having more children, more young people. But the camp program is focused on 11 to 15-year-olds. And then we have, of course, older people as guides and adults as activity directors. But really, this was an experimental approach. But with that video, we attracted a lot of interest and were able to then get some funding to begin to expand out the program, introduce a curriculum with some publications around unity and diversity, around consultation, and this idea that we call experiential learning, where we have no more than 10% talk and 90% action and activity, showing a few basic principles, and then during the activities, bringing those principles out for the children to learn in various ways. So the idea of getting them out in nature, in God's creation, is really important. Taking them away from their phones and getting them to engage with the creation and with each other out in that creation is a critical part of this camp, especially in today's over technology world, social media and all of the requisite challenges that come with that as well. So Barbara, you mentioned the urban versus rural. What comments do you have there as an educator working with young people who in some cases were in serious trouble and trying to help them make better choices? What do you want to share about your experiences there?
The whole nature of getting kids away from their devices is sometimes even a struggle for getting adults away from our devices. And so simple things that we can do when you go away from electronics, for example, helps you develop communication skills. It helps you to develop the opportunity to read people by looking in their eyes and experiencing their body language and understanding the whole notion of talking without words, being able to express yourself in a way that makes sense to the other person, where you're listening actively and you're receiving what they're saying, all those kinds of things. The ability to actually literally read and write, because there are so many in our communities now who are functionally illiterate. And it would probably amaze you and astound you that some people that very, very well are functionally illiterate, not able to construct decent sentences as they write and read. They can't. Those are issues and problems. And when our young people have deficiencies in basic communication skills, they have a tendency to act out to cover them up. And so in acting out, that comes with another whole set of problems and solutions that you have to go through social services, or you have to go through the criminal justice department or some outside source outside of the home, outside of the church, in order to step in and do some corrective actions because they had not been taught, they had not been learned. There are a lot of students, a lot of family members who are young persons who are quite well and quite able to do these things, and they serve as excellent role models. They serve as mentors for their peers and for persons, let's say they're 14, 15 years old, and they serve as great role models and peers for younger kids that are in elementary school. There are college age students that serve as excellent role models for younger kids that are going through various things. So there are all kinds of things in the gambit in terms of education, but also in terms of our societal agencies that are in place to help do some of the correcting that needs to take place. And with some of the things that we're trying to do with these camps, we're trying to infuse naturally into people, not just the students, not just the children that come 11 to 14 or 15.
Yeah, that's the core. 11 to 15 is the core.
11 to 15,
Yep.
not just the kids, but the whole thing. When you invited me out to Arizona was to have families to come.
Right.
And so I brought an 11-year-old with me, but I also brought her grandmother. And so the three of us, I sheltered and hovered and auntied her, but nevertheless, it was all about the families getting together and fellowshipping and all those kinds of things. And that's what we're trying to instill.
Well, and let me go a step further and say, we all know that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Of course, first and foremost, it takes parents to raise a child.
Yes.
The village is secondary. And when families break apart and serious challenges happen, you better hope you have a village around you. But you don't have a village if you don't have parents and solid families within that village, which is why we typically have some kind of associate camp program for the younger siblings that want to come. And then we, of course, the older children, 16, 17, 18 and beyond, they're working as guides, and some of the parents are working in the kitchen and set up and take down. So we encourage that family involvement. I want to also say that in terms of the village, our faith group and other faith groups, probably in your church, you may have Sunday school classes or other children's classes. We have children's classes that are open to people within the Baha'i faith, for example, and others. We also have, they're called junior youth programs, which are for 11 to 15 years old. But again, inviting all people. So we view this as an expansion outward to, as I mentioned earlier, invite others in to participate in community building activities, while also teaching people who are closest to us, our own children and others in our circle, how to do outreach and make friends outside of our faith group. And then those connections might lead some of those children of their own choice to join one of the youth groups on an ongoing basis. My daughter started teaching children's classes when she was, I think, 11, 12, 13. She would teach a small group of 6, 7, 8-year-olds various lessons. So this is a community approach that we take. These camps are an extension of that whole process. What I want to do now is show another clip from the next year.
Let me insert right here.
Yep.
I just want to make sure that folks that are listening are understanding how we're pushing this whole idea of building community, the collaborative nature of everybody working together with diversity. Community is key, and how we have communication and all of that to help build our communities is just very, very vital.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this next video was from the 2023 camp this past summer. The first one was 2022. And now we had a name. It was called Hillcrest Orchard Camp. And this video is a little longer. It's about 6 minutes. It tells a bigger, longer story. I'm going to play 2 clips, one at the beginning and then one a little towards the end to show two different aspects of the camp. And this is all just live, so hopefully we'll get without any technical glitches through this, and we'll talk a little bit about each segment as we go. Our young people are immersed in social media. Getting them out of that environment is job number one. To take the phone out from in front of their face. We really believe deeply in the Hillcrest Orchard Camp and the ability of this program to make a difference and to form bonds of friendship and community that are clearly visible to the outside. I've been involved with youth camps pretty much my entire adult life. These include camps in Scotland, South Africa, and a camp that I established and directed in Germany for 5 years. And I've seen the way that these camps can transform young people. I've always had this idea that the camps could do more.
So this lesson is about teamwork, right? So in this camp, we're working in teams.
Hillcrest Orchard Camp. We have a curriculum for young people between the ages of 11 to 15 where we're talking about spiritual principles grounded in experiential activities such as gardening, service, nature and conservancy, and some core education, physical activities. We've got a swimming pool. You know, it's a wonderful, fun summer experience for them.
That spot up there, there's a path. We're going to take that path up that way.
So you could see there a little bit the pavilions and some of the work that was done over the course of the year, and we had more children, we had more people involved, we had a name, and the focus was just greatly enhanced. I want to show one more clip now that goes a little bit more into what we're specifically teaching in the gardening portion of the camp and the point of having agriculture involved.
Now, who has petunias?
Oh, me, that's me.
Okay, so the way these work is they protect one another, and at times they self-sacrifice for one another. So what I would like you to do to start is pick two of your favorites, preferably two different plants. My activity was the gardening. We talked a lot about the beauty of unity and diversity in the companion planting of certain flowers protecting certain vegetables. We were also measuring our hands, spacing each plant at least the span of your hand. And that introduced the moral component of giving each other space, setting boundaries so that each personal plant has room to grow.
You have a geranium, you can put yours in the corner here.
In the natural world, the food and flowers, the plants are like people, and we can be like them.
And that's a great illustration of how we integrate the experience. And I want to pull now something from the Bible that a lot of people probably haven't thought of. The first two commandments, as evidenced in the book of Genesis, are one that was given to Adam before Eve when it was even created. And that was to dress and keep the garden, right? So a lot of young people really interested in, the overall conservation of the planet, climate change. The second commandment that came once Eve was there was be fruitful and multiply. And of course, that was the one that humankind has had no problem keeping, right? We have become the most invasive species the world has ever seen. And the yin and yang of balancing these two first commandments, dress and keep the garden, and be fruitful and multiply. And of course, Adam gave names to all the animals and was supposed to know and understand to be the caretaker of all of creation. So we weave all of that in at a very basic foundational level in an experiential way, and try to teach the children, the young people, a balance of these things. And we find it to be extremely effective. So, Barbara, tell us a little bit about, sort of anticipating a couple of the video clips that are coming. Tell us a little bit about one of the reasons why you in particular, and also Janie, were invited to join these activities. And people who saw you last time will know the genesis point was this book, Blooming for Christ, that you'd written.
Absolutely. You, in the previous clip, showed the companion gardening, which really intrigued me, the whole nature of that comparison, those analogies of people and plants. The Blooming for Christ book that I wrote is about an analogy of the life cycle of a plant's growth, from that seed through maturity, spewing more seeds, and the cycle starting again with them being planted somewhere, is the same as the maturation of your spiritual life. And so someone plants a seed in you for your faith to sprout. You have to be nurtured and go through all those steps. And so basically that's what Blooming for Christ is all about. It's about growing godly intimacy. And when you got a glimpse of that on social media, where I was promoting it, of course, that's what authors do, you tapped into it, because everything that I was saying in the promo paralleled what you were doing with your program. And then the more I read about what you were doing, the more I said, well, I know a church in my area who's doing this gardening, raised bed gardening, community garden for everyone. So why not try this? And so I chatted with the family, the mother and grandmother, and tried to find out if they were interested in this. And both of them were eager and said, of course, we would like, yeah, you could take Lily along with you. And I said, well, no, not without someone else. So one of you has to go. And the family worked that part out. But the whole idea was that that particular church, the Rock of Ages United Holy Church, had already begun a raised bed garden. And the youth of that church, along with their friends, so it wasn't just members of that church, but their friends were coming along on Saturdays or whenever they had the time set aside to do that. And they were excited about what they were doing, and actually building everything from flat land to that was absolutely nothing. They actually built the raised bed garden. They decided what they were going to plant, and they nurtured and cultivated and harvested. And they were able to keep going back and getting it, and actually cooking it, eating it and cooking it and preparing it, and knowing that they had grown it. And there are so many health factors involved in going back to nature and buying seeds instead of just buying the collards from out of the grocery store. So there were a lot of intrinsic things, and an avid gardener in the church participated very wholeheartedly to help the kids learn the dynamics of gardening and the watering and the pruning and all of the different steps that go along with it. But there was a particular church that I was very, very acquainted with, and that was the reason why I selected them. And they indeed came out to Arizona and are pictured in some of the video clips that you have there. It was just a wonderful experience. And coming back, I mean, while we were there maybe a few hours, And I heard the young lady already calling the kids that she had met my friend.
Yep.
I'm like, wow, it's only been a few minutes and you've met friends already.
Yep.
And so that unity and diversity and all of that, I mean, I'm all in for that. And I want to replicate that, especially at the Rock of Ages, where you guys come and help help restore that and help them to build that up to another whole level when you come to Virginia. And maybe we'll have another site where you can do something that hasn't been done before, depending on what the landowner has decided that they want to plant on that particular piece of property.
Yeah, what we found is one of the magic ingredient is this outward looking focus, right? And I want to share a little story. I hinted at this in the sort of the warm up. When I was developing that camp in Germany, and I ran it for 5 years, the 5th year, so we had people from all over the world really coming to that camp. And at the end, we ran it in 4 languages. We had Dutch, French, German, and English. And we were working even with in Russia, and some people might remember the Chernobyl disaster. We were looking to get some kids from that area to come to the camp who had actually suffered radiation poisoning. So it was just really outward looking, but it was still run by a church. But one of the friends from the local church was where I was associate pastor in Stuttgart, Germany, invited his friend to come to the camp, even though it was a church camp, and we welcomed him there. And this young man was exceptional. I mean, the church youth was one of my, you hate to say you have favorites, but he was just awesome. And I had sort of befriended him because his father had died a tragic death when he was 12. And so I took a special interest in him. I think he was around 12, might have been 11 or 13. But anyway, he invited his friend, Christoph was his name. And they were just an excellent example throughout camp. But Christoph was just exceptional. He had never experienced anything quite like this. He just loved it. So at the end, we typically awarded a camper of the session.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided to award this to Christoph, even though he was not a member of our church. And I have to admit that I was kind of happy that I was able to do it. I kind of knew the reaction it would provoke, but I didn't expect the reaction to be as strong as it was. Many of the people within our faith group were incensed, even outraged, that we had awarded camper of the session to an outsider. And I, of course, wanted to do that for that reason, to sort of educate and say, look, we can, we shouldn't just think we're all the best and we have all the truth and we have all the answers. And other people have things they can contribute to. But that's the magic of these camp programs, is that is built into the DNA to be outward looking. And so wherever we go, we look around in the community and we invite others to participate. And that helps the thing get off the ground very quickly, because you have many people in your community, as you know, who are looking for, Bono of U2 said it best when he said, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. And in another song, he said, I'd join the movement if there was one I could believe it. Well, this outward looking approach, and as I mentioned in one of those videos, it's clearly visible from the outside, this love and unity, this community building that isn't judging others as being outside or different or outside our circle, but rather inviting everybody in. So this next little clip I'm going to show from our fall camp illustrates that particular piece of magic, in which we found a woman who was in our local community. It turns out she was only 6 minutes from us. And we found her on Facebook, and she had this farm called That Zen Farm. And we learned a little about what she's doing, went to meet with her, and she welcomed us to do part of our camp on her farm. And this next clip shows both the harvesting aspect that you talked about earlier at the beginning, and then introduces what we did with that Zen farm. During some of the workshops today, while half the camp was doing the challenge courses, we had the gardening program where we harvested using the potatoes to make French fries. What's really unique and different to this camp is that we really want no more than 10% talking. And then they're doing things, right? Deeds, not words, be your adorning. One of the things that was important to us was expanding further out into the community. So we started asking who else in the community is doing things and might be interested in working with us.
I'm Marcy. I own that Zen farm. My husband and I own this farm. Today, I'm going to have you start by becoming part of the horse herd. We're going to do an obstacle course using your body energy and your body language to move the horse. The first tool you're going to use is called the curry comb. Nice, yep, take your time, go round and round.
Like trying to gain their trust by like touching them and letting them like get our sense.
Now the next part, which is how do we use our bodies and our energy to move the horses?
Marcy provided an experience where she taught them how to really be aware of their bodies and their breaths, and that would help them to lead the horses.
You want the horse's head slightly in front of you. Nice. Exhale and stop your feet. Excellent.
The leadership component was taking young men and women who are 11 to 15 and showing them that they have the energy to lead this 1,000-pound animal around and even take it through an obstacle course. And that was quite an experience for all the participants this year. I lost you there for a second, Barbara. I probably pulled you out of the studio instead of the video.
I'm backstage.
So I wanted to also comment that we've got a number of great comments in the chat. We'll be getting to those later. Don't worry, we will be giving books away to those who comment that with comments that we find helpful, intriguing, interesting, whatever. And a copy of Barbara's book in particular, Blooming for Christ. And why don't you take a moment to tell us about the other book that you have recently published?
The other book was published was before that, called Beyond Discipleship to Relationship, Developing Intimacy with God. And it's basically a trilogy that I have written where Blooming for Christ is the third and Beyond Discipleship was the second book. But basically, the whole idea has everything to do with relationships. And if we're not in decent relationships with other people right here on earth, it's difficult to understand that God would even want to receive us in heaven to be in relationship with him. And so Beyond Discipleship links itself to talking about you made a decision to be like Christ, created in the image of God, and you've decided that you want to be a follower of Christ. And so that's discipleship. Disciple making is when you reach out and you branch out and invite others to share your faith, and you're in relationship with them. And then when you're beyond discipleship to relationship and develop more intimacy with God, even that's not enough for you. You want to seek more. And in order to continue to grow, which is the common theme for the camps and the programs that you're doing, in order to continue to grow, you have to be in relationship, in community with other people. So I talk a lot about triads in terms of at least 2 or 3 other people. Jesus had his Peter, James, and John. There are always others that you need. You need mentors. You need significant other accountability partners where you can find a place to go and have conversation to build your faith, as well as to straighten you out when you go astray. Someone that can lovingly lead you into another place. And so Beyond Discipleship to Relationship is a book that helps you to understand through practical examples and stories that I've implanted in the book, to tell you about how you can indeed grow intimate relationships, especially in triads. And if you use the concept of multiplying the relationship factor in small groups, then you can see how even a mega church with thousands of members could use that same formula and expand its ministries and do a lot more outreach, a lot more diverse programming, because you need to do things that will reach all people outside the church, not just inside the walls of the church. So that describes Favorite by the Father Ministries as well, a church without walls.
Thank you so much. I want to quickly just add to that and emphasize that with a quote, a secular quote, actually. This is from a commencement address given at one of the major universities years ago. But of course, it's even more true today. But it addresses that idea that you just shared about Jesus and the triad and having people who you're very close to help hold you accountable. And the quote goes like this. Orthodoxy makes people stupid. Rudyard Kipling said, "What do they know of England who only England know?" And when I was living in Europe, and by the way, I was born in Canada, and when I was 9, I was transplanted into a Swedish household. And I was a very obnoxious, loud American boy at that time because we moved to America when I was 2, and I didn't have I love and respect my parents, but honestly, I didn't have the best parents, and I didn't have the best early upbringing. I was a very loud, obnoxious American boy when I went to Sweden. Lived in a Swedish family for over 2 years. Later, I came back to the U.S., and then when I went to Europe again, I had this view of, Americans who had not traveled, who only knew America, that was not favorable. And part of it was because America is such a huge, vast country. We have like the World Series baseball, right? But it's only America, right? Whereas other other parts of the world, world tournaments are really world tournaments, and they know a little bit about the other countries in the world. So Rudyard Kipling is saying, what do they know of England who only England know? In other words, if all you know is your own little space, you don't really even know that because you haven't ever seen it from the outside. Then he went on to say, similarly, we can say those who know only their own thoughts do not really know those because those thoughts have not been challenged. So it's this challenge from outside independent observers with a different perspective that make us think more deeply, and even about our faith. And it's not even that our faith has to be challenged per se, but rather it's our misunderstanding of our faith. It's where we got it wrong that somebody else will say, well, that's stupid, or that's silly, or I don't see that at all, right? And if we're honest and open, we might reflect on it, and we might come to a more full understanding, because none of us have the full picture on God. And he says he reigns on the just and the unjust alike. And that's not to say others are unjust. It's to say that everyone has access to God if they turn to him in all of their diversity, and everyone's going to perceive God a little differently. Everyone's going to pick up on a different aspect of God's character, of his love, of his characteristics. Some people might really like the submission and obedience part. Others might like the forgiveness part a little bit more. And this diversity of relationship with God helps us reflect on our own understanding of God and our own faith. And so I want to now ask you to take yourself back to when I first invited you to go to the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute to participate in this Hillcrest Orchard Camp, this Royal Falcon Leadership Program at this strange place out in the desert. And I remember sort of inviting you to take somebody else, perhaps from your congregation or somebody else in the community, to join you so that we could have the benefit of your perspective in our program. And I want to take you back to that moment, how you felt and what thoughts you may have had to overcome to actually get on that plane, especially with somebody in tow, dragging them out into the desert along with her granddaughter.
Well, the bottom line of it is a lot of intrepidation. I was not sure, so I went straight to Jesus. I had come to Jesus meeting that was nonstop, and I pondered for a long time. I communicated back and forth with you and didn't really give you an answer for a few weeks, I'm sure. It was not all of a sudden. For sure, it was not.
And it was an invitation. Hopefully I wasn't pushy.
No, you were not. You were not at all. You were not even coercive. You were sharing information. And as I finally began to share with others, I prayed about, well, who could the family be? And as I looked in the church where I serve, Beulah Baptist Church, right here in Tappahannock, I serve as associate pastor there. As I looked in the congregation and looked at the people in front of me and looked at people on the Bible study line and various activities that we do, I did not see people that were connected with what the mission was for what you were inviting me to. But as I said earlier in this program, I did know that there was a raised bed garden at another church. There were people and children that were connected. I said, well, he said, invite somebody from your church. This isn't my church, but it's a church in my community, and it represented the same thing that was already in place. And so I prayed some more and then asked that family what they thought about it. And we went back and forth and we prayed together. Notice how many times I'm saying we prayed.
Yep.
And then there's this whole thing about me being a city girl. and in me, it is this urban person that I am. But God said, go ye therefore into all the world. And God said, my thoughts are not your thoughts. My ways are not your ways. And so if I have been called to minister to God's people wherever he sends me, then who am I to say, well, I'll go over here, but I won't go over there. And so it's like, well, God, if you make me, I'll go. And so I ended up saying, well, okay, I'm going to go whether you guys go or not. I have decided that I am going to go because I trust God. And I don't think that God is going to lead me to something that he won't benefit and allow me to bring glory to him. If I'm going out there with my book called Blooming for Christ with a big, pretty picture of a flower on it. I know I've got one right beside me. A big, pretty picture of the flower. And in bold print, it says Blooming for Christ. They know who I am and what I represent. And so they still want me there. So I will go and I will be my authentic self. And I will speak whatever God tells me to speak when he tells me to do so. And you gave every opportunity. But going into it, I struggled with what God was saying to me. Yeah, I'm created in the image of God. And then to dare to take somebody else's child with me? Right. How in the world? That was trusting God, but also working with a family that trusts God, even with the child who knows of the Lord and has grown up in a faith where she can speak about her own faith as well as share her faith with her peers. And I know that she does that. And so it's like, well, I could take her because she's strong-minded enough. She's a self-thinker, so she can be acclimated into a new environment. She makes new friends easily, and all those things are considered. And I knew I was going to watch her with eagle eyes anyway, which you can attest to. Like, ease up a little bit. Like, no, I can't ease up on her. I've got to. But all of those things were just so real. And it's just like any other human being. You got fear of the unknown, but my faith is stronger than my fear. And so I continued to pray. I continued to go to God. And as the adventure continued, I decided in my fleshly self to say, well, you've got this secret goal of visiting all of the 50 states in the contiguous U.S. So this will be another check mark when you go to Arizona and come back. And now I can say to everybody, which is what I posted on Facebook, I've been to Arizona in the desert. You know, here I am in the desert. I lived in the desert. And so I looked at the positives in terms of ministry, ministering, witnessing, sharing. And I didn't go to do a lecture. I didn't go to do a book talk. I went to experience the diversity of cultures, which I knew would be present. And that's what I told my church when I went. I'm going to go, and I'm going to need y'all to pray for me, because I don't know what I'm going to face when I get there, but I'm going. And they prayed for me. And when I got back, they asked me, well, how did it go? How did it go? Like, everything went better than I ever expected it. But it was difficult. It was a difficult decision.
And I was so grateful. And I know that I was, I've shared that I was waking up in the middle of the night in a kind of a cold sweat. What have I done bringing these diverse group of people together out here in the desert? And who knows what's going to happen? So now we're going to give everybody a little bit of insight by playing a clip from that. This will be an extended clip, about maybe 3 minutes or so. And then we'll come back and look at the comments and wrap this up by letting people know how they can get involved and sharing out your book.
Great.
So let's see here. There we go. Oh, I guess I need to press play. Waters shall burst forth in the wilderness and streams in the desert. A highway shall be there, and a road. It shall be called the Highway of Holiness. After doing a few camps up in Wisconsin, we got an invitation to come to Desert Rose Baha'i Institute in Arizona. This is a spiritual location here in the desert. And in fact, it was a perfect setting for our agricultural program because they don't have soil here, they have dead dust. Everyone give us their name and where they're from.
I'm Janie, and I'm from Virginia, and I'm here with Barbara and my granddaughter, Lily.
Janie is here to assist with the program, representing her church in her region. So when we were able to bring in pastors from other churches and an educational organization in California called Middle Tree, these various pieces got mixed into the program that we put together here at Desert Rose. And what came out of it was something that none of us really could imagine.
I'm Barbara Brehon, and I'm Associate Pastor of Beulah Baptist Church in Tappahannock, Virginia.
I'm here to share how the book that I wrote, Blooming for Christ, ties in with the philosophy of blooming where you're planted.
Wade Franson brought me here, literally, after having found my latest book. The content of it resonated in his spirit because it directly connected to what was going to be happening here at Desert Rose Baha'i Institute.
So first we wanted to teach the folks how to basically plant in the desert. So the kids hand mixed guano, biochar, and then we put worm castings into that, and then we put like a worm tea on there to make their own like really nice planting mix.
There's a common ground, I believe, about elevating God and wanting to be in fellowship and communion with who He is in terms of a holistic nature. The nature of keeping the grounds, agriculturally speaking, as well as being a good steward of all that God created.
Day one, we set up a big garden area, planted everything, prepared the soil, protected it with a fence, planted the raised bed gardens. A lot of hard work in the hot sun. How hot was that sun, Barbara?
More than 100 degrees every day. I mean, enough said. I think about the temperature, but we were very, very well hydrated. And I asked Lily's mom to make sure that she was hydrated well before we left, give her a week of lots of water so that we won't have to start from scratch. And we did pretty well with that. It was just amazing to me that the dead dirt came to life with irrigation and the appropriate mixture of ingredients, because the soil was first tested and the ingredients that the scientists on your team put together in the right combination, and taught the kids all about the scientific part of it as well. And then they had the hands-on to actually do it. They actually got the learning about it while they were doing it, as you could see it in the video, as you could hear it. And it was just fascinating to me how all of that happened. And then a few months later, you did send me pictures of what the crops looked like that we had planted. And I think I did post that on my social media for people to see a few months later.
Yeah, and this is another example of that outward looking focus and finding others. So we have benefited now. We have connections to Sahar, who was the woman in the video. She's the soil scientist, very young, energetic, and enthusiastic, like my daughter's cat here, who wants to get on the action. This is Licorice, by the way. Let me now she's like getting around bugs just good. Now she's gone. So Sahar is now a resource that we can use. And of course, they had been struggling with getting this program off the ground. They needed the energy and the enthusiasm that we brought, plus, the hands to do that work. And they've been, they now have a table to kitchen garden that they use in the canteen area there. And a little later in the clip, Sahar talks about the plans they have to build and grow that garden as part of their whole approach, because the Desert Rose Baha'i Institute is supposed to be focused on agriculture and the arts, but they've been struggling on getting that agricultural program going over the years. So, you and Janie and all the rest of us, we all helped get that up and running. And they are a resource to us, so that when we go to Virginia, we can take soil samples, we can send them in, we can have it analyzed and figure out, based on the climate, the season, the time of planting, how to best help those people who have wanted to allow our use of their land, donate land for use for both raised bed gardens and a larger garden, as well as an orchard that we're talking about planting. It's just amazing how quickly the ball gets rolling on all this. And which gets me to the point of, I'll go ahead and share the QR code now. What you can do, those of you who are watching, you can take out your device, your phone, your iPad, turn on the camera and point it at that QR code. And then that will take you to a page, take a minute to load, where we have various levels of participation, starting with a $10 donation, which is a seed donor. And anyone that donates at that level will get a call out on this show. A $25 donation, I think it's called a seedling. The various levels are listed there on the page. And that person also gets listed as a seedling donor on the website. At the $50 level, you're also awarded a free book. There's a link where you can pick a book of your choice from something or other publishing from among the options that are offered there. And then it goes up to, I think I got cat hair now in my mouth somehow. Too much information, I know, sorry. But and then at $100 or $250, you're actually sponsoring a participant to be able to go in their various levels. $500 is the highest level right now. That's a full scholarship. We do have some very large donors who are donating money to this program, but they are encouraged to continue those donations when they see that we also have broad support of those people who are able and willing to donate even $10. So every donation is really powerful because it encourages those who have deeper pockets to go ahead and invest and support these programs as well. Those donations will be critical for us to fund the travel and the supplies necessary to help Barbara and Janie and the folks out in Virginia. They'll probably get it done without us, but make light work and lighter work. And so there's just a synergy that happens when multiple parties get involved.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, anything you want to add to that while I clear my throat here?
I'm just agreeing with what you've said so far, because the whole nature of what can happen with a couple of the properties that have been suggested donations so far have such vast possibility for our community. And the whole idea that we have is to have it so that the community uses it. It's not just something for a particular region or a particular set of people. We want the community to be able to have easy access to what is planted there. And the landowners have agreed that this is what they want. And so your donations to support this mission would assist in providing scholarships even for young people to participate, because there's an application process, registration process. And the more we receive, the more we will be able to give. So there is value here. And if you believe in what we are sharing, then show the value by your contribution, and we will appreciate it.
Thank you. Very well said. We'll put that QR code back up in a little bit. I want to now show the clip where Sahar is actually talking about what they're going to do with this garden and at Desert Rose, and then a few more words from Barbara from the video, and then we'll wrap up and look at the comments. So if you haven't commented yet, get your comments in so that we can look at those, share them, and give away a couple of free books.
We're going to go to the markets, we're going to get everything certified, we're going to keep our stuff online, we're going to feed the local people, we're going to bring on more local people, and it's hard to do any of that without something growing. So to be honest, this is just like proof of life on Earth.
I just loved coming here and just spending time with everybody.
They came together so quickly, and within knowing each other for only a few minutes in some cases, began referring to each other as my friend. And that's who God is in you, in me, and that's how you share your faith with other people. It doesn't have to be a structured setting. It's that place without walls that permeates everything. We already have a church, and actually multiple churches, that do agricultural things by nature of where we are and what we do. I can't wait to see which ones will hear this and buy into it, because they know it has value. I think of the verse that says, eyes have not seen, ears have not yet heard what is waiting for us to do.
Wow. I think that about says it all, but I can always have something extra to say. Wow. Woo. Memories from that, because it was electrifying in a spiritual sense to put your hands in the dirt and make things come together. Again, I'm mystified by the whole idea of the companion planting, where certain plants placed beside other plants protect them and that sort of thing. And we were able to actually harvest some of the plants that were done, and the kids took them back inside later, planted them in the morning, went back later that afternoon and harvested some things, leaves, and made tea. And then they did this activity to taste the tea blindfolded and see if they could determine which flavor it was. And that was really, really interesting. And quite a few of them were able to do that. And it's just so many wonderful things that happened in regard to that whole thing. It's all about blooming where you plant it. It's all about understanding that cycle of growth. And that's what I write about. That's what I am about. My ministry is all about helping people to grow in whatever way that means. If I need to stand in front of a congregation or a convention hall or something with thousands of people, or just one-on-one, it doesn't matter to me. What matters is, God, use me to help somebody else become who you created them to be, not who I want them to be. I don't want to work within the box of my thoughts, my perspectives, which Wade has talked a little bit about differently. But, I've got to have other perspectives besides mine. Otherwise, I won't see what God has for me to see to assist other people. And in helping them, I help myself. And then I grow even closer to God through that interaction.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and add a comment to that, which will also give me a chance to mention who's going to be on the show next week. And perhaps, Barbara, if you want to take a look at some of the comments, if you can see them over there, okay. As we come to the close here. I've seen many of them come in, lots of great comments there. Keep them coming right through the end. And also share this show and this program and the link to the donations with your friends and family. So when you were talking about, well, a couple things. The companion gardening, one of the things that I found fascinating is to learn that plants actually communicate with each other through their roots, underground, the root system. And many things that we didn't know about plants. Just fascinating the way in which the entire creation is just absolutely magnificent. And there's just so much to learn from the study of any aspect of it. The other piece, when you mentioned about being in a box, next week we've got another returning guest, and this is Joe Atman, who has written a book called The Philosophical War. And I was attracted to this book because he has a different take on the Garden of Eden story. He looks at it from a philosophical perspective, and he has a PhD in the philosophy of religion. But he has a reverence for the book of Genesis, and he's able to, take that story and not denigrate it as a myth, but elevate it by talking about what some of the symbols in the Garden of Eden could mean. And one of the things that he highlights is that the serpent introduced conscious thought in which we, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and the serpent, casting doubt on what God says by saying, did God forbid you basically to eat of all the trees, and forcing Adam and Eve to say, no, he didn't. But putting that doubt in their mind, and then Eve taking of that fruit. But he explains that we must conceptualize. What that means is we approach things analytically and we try to understand them, which is good and natural, but we have to form a concept in order to understand reality. And that concept is not reality itself. It's the idea about the thing that we have in our mind. And so it is with God. We formulate an idea in our mind about who and what God is.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever our limited pea brain can grasp, is not what God really is. And so whatever concept we have in our mind is actually an idol. It is an image of God. It is a construct that we have developed to try to comprehend God. This is why it's important to realize you cannot fully comprehend God. Don't get me wrong. I pray every day to acknowledge that God has created me to know him and to worship him. At the same time, I know in this limited physical life, I will never fully know God, not even close. But I have a concept of God in my mind, and that concept of God is limited by my own thinking, by my own flawed thinking, by my own errors of perception, by my own wrong ideas. And years ago, I gave a sermon about how, to your point earlier about families and parents, Barbara, how in one sense, you know, God is the father, and the church can be like our mother. It even talks about, you know, the holy Jerusalem descending from heaven, and then elsewhere it's called Jerusalem, the mother of us all. And so I explained how we shouldn't let our flawed under our, you know, if our parents made mistakes, we shouldn't let that color our view of God or our view of the church. But it's in our own mind where we have these concepts that limit God. So next week we'll have Joe Atman on the show, as well as Dan, and we're going to be talking about the idea of what is truth. Remember that famous question that Pilate asked Jesus, "What is truth?" We're going to be asking that same question, and, you know, noodling around trying to answer it in next week's show. But I wanted to share that, Barbara, because this boxed in thinking, right? And you even have a logo with a butterfly escaping, and of course you're out and about in your ministry with Favored by the Father Ministries. I want to invite you here in conclusion to talk a little bit more about how all of this ties in with your vision for how to represent God, how to bring people to God, how to minister to people, and the work that you've been given by our Father to do on earth.
Well, Favored by the Father Ministries is a church without walls. It functions outside of the traditional church. I'm association moderator over a conglomerate of more than 30 churches. I'm associate pastor. I'm part of this and I'm part of that. But the ministry that I do with boots on the ground is something that's under that umbrella called Favored by the Father. The logo is a box, a black, dark box with butterflies floating out of it, which represents the fact that you can flutter freely in God if you have self-identity that's authentic. And so in creating ministry, all I'm doing is following what I believe God is telling me to do. Since the COVID pandemic, I experienced the privilege of being a victorious warrior through the pandemic. I had COVID, and in those days of struggle, I listened to God telling me to stand upon the mountain and proclaim his holy name. And since then, in the 2 years since I had COVID, God developed ministry digital application. So there's a digital app that can be downloaded on any phone or device from any Play Store, you know, Android or iOS. And there are Bible studies, there are daily devotionals, my YouTube channel for my sermons, all kinds of things are there. Even if you need literacy work, there's a link for developing literacy and all of that, getting help for that. Also doing the same couple of years, not only going to Arizona with folks like with Wade, but I also had the privilege of developing a podcast. And last week, Wade was a special guest for me, and I appreciate that, called Unboxed. And then I changed the title to Unboxed on Purpose, because that whole thing is about identifying a crucial time where you stepped out, like those butterflies, you stepped out of a box of confinement to sojourn to your destiny, to your actual place of purpose, ultimate purpose. And so you flutter in the air toward the Lord who's leading and guiding you. And so those are some things. The writing that I do, I've been writing for a long time. I used to write articles for a religious journal. Now I write books and write chapters in other people's books or whatever God tells me to write. And you can access my writing on my Amazon page, amazon.com. Just do an author search and I'm there. But all of that is under the umbrella of Favored by the Father Ministries. I also recognize the need for fellowship. And so every fourth Friday, we play bingo with Reverend BB at a local restaurant. And we just get together and play. And there's a local grocery store, Food Lion, that donates the prizes. We do practical prizes, and we just call the bingo numbers and have fun. And so that holistic global idea of holistic idea of who the person is. What are your needs? What do you do? If you need me to sit with you, if you need me to talk with you, if you need me to counsel you, if you need me to marry you, if you need me to bury you, if you need me to, whatever preachers do, whatever ordained clergy is able to do, whatever you need me for, call me, I show up. I travel, obviously. I will do whatever I need to do. I do book signings, I do chat and choose, I do workshops, I do preaching engagements, whatever it is that somebody asks me to do. If it is going to help somebody to grow closer in their relationship with the Lord, I'm your girl. I'm your woman. I'm the one to go because I am a spiritual bodybuilder. There you
Wonderful.
go.
Wonderful.
I could talk forever about that, but
well, and it was just so wonderful to have you in Arizona along with Janie. And along with the folks from Middle Tree as well. Let's give a shout out to them out in California. Joe Atman is actually the founder of Middle Tree, who's coming on next week. So it's a February, as I guess the whole camp Royal Falcon month here on the Creating the Image of God show. Middle Tree is an organization that works in the school systems out in California, but also in other states. And so we're talking to him about how we can collaborate and cooperate in expanding this program into some of the areas that he serves, Los Angeles area, Sacramento, and whatnot. Well, we've had just a lot of great comments. I'm gonna throw just one on here to show. Talking about this ultimate truth was responding to a comment that you made about getting out and doing gardening, and he says, or this person, I shouldn't say he. This person says it humbles you. That's for sure. Always draws me closer to the Lord. Getting my hands dirty. That is. There's place where you can get your hands dirty and it's a very positive thing. And I love this one as well. When we were talking about the creation and the roots communicating, even the stones cry out, which is a quote, of course, from the Bible. And other holy writings also talk about the stones crying out in response to God and his creation. Anything that jumps out at you in terms of the comments here, Barbara?
There's one in particular, Ralph Shoemaker has been writing a lot. And there's one in particular, I like the single words: surrender, submission, obedience, serenity, peace. He put in a particular thing.
Yep, there it is.
That just draws me. I've been reading I read all of them, all the comments, but Ralph Shoemaker in particular, because of his synopsis right there.
Well, and I think the comment came in when we were talking about each of us see different aspects of God. Some might focus more on the surrender or the submission, the sincerity, the peace. all these attributes of God that resonate with us that we seek to emulate and have in our lives. The fruits of the Spirit is another formulation. But yeah, so is Ralph the one that you would like to donate a book to?
Ralph is the one. I think he was extremely engaged. As I said, he's got several comments in there. I lost count of how many. And that one had pricked my interest. So I want to choose Ralph Shoemaker.
Wonderful. So Ralph, I think you might have won a book previously, which is great. We'll gladly send you another one. I'm just saying, I think we might have your address on file. And thank you for being such a dedicated follower and commenter. But go ahead and send an email to info@soupllc.com, because our sponsor, Something or Other Publishing, is the one who arranges these donations, and will take your address and get a book sent over to you. Barbara, thank you. We'll go ahead and purchase that book from you, and thank you for being on the show, and we'll donate it to Ralph. I'm going to give another copy away, and this is an anthology. We didn't play the ad for it, but it's 25 servings of soup. It's a book published by Something or Other Publishing. It has a 25 short stories from authors from all over the world, actually. And I think I'm going to offer this one to Sail Stiletto because of this comment here. Many try and put him in a bottle, my pastor used to say, speaking about putting God in a box. I guess maybe evokes the imagery of putting the genie back in the bottle. And
I actually paid attention to that one as well.
So we're going to send you, Sail Stiletto, a copy of 25 servings of soup. So I'm just going to make sure, in case Ralph didn't catch that, Ralph Shoemaker, please, I'm typing this in the chat. Please send your addresses to info@soupllc.com. And there we go. So two of our many commenters won a free book today, and we hope you've enjoyed today's show. I certainly have just really enjoyed having you back here, Barbara. Tune in next week for Joe and Dan, our two philosopher friends, to talk about what is truth. There are three sides to every story, especially when it comes to relationships between two people. One side, the other, and the truth. And by the truth, this is coming from Joe. And by the truth, I mean the objective truth as understood by an independent observer. That is, if such a thing as an independent observer even exists. This is how philosophers talk, right? So we shall dive into that subject next week. Barbara, I'm sure we'll have you back again to share more about our adventures together and separately. And thank you so much for all you're doing for the people who look to you for inspiration, who look to you as a light shedder, as a guide, as a comforter, as a counselor, as they seek to follow the path that God has gotten them on. And a companion might be another way just to put it simply, a helper of their joy, as it says in the Bible. And
it's been my pleasure.
And with that, I bid everyone good night, and may God be with you. Hope to see you again here, same place, same time.